November 5, 2025, Puerto Cabello, 4:36 a.m. local time. A Venezuelan Navy patrol squadron slipped out of Puerto Cabello under complete radio silence. 4 fast boats, each outfitted with 12.7mm heavy machine guns and old Soviet-era 73mm launchers. Their mission: intercept the American warship entering claimed Venezuelan waters. What they didn't know was that their intel was already outdated. The target wasn't a lone destroyer at all. It was the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a 100,000-ton floating airbase, sailing with a full strike group of 6 escort ships. By 5:21 a.m., radar operators aboard the Eisenhower picked up faint echoes approaching from the south. Small, fast, unorganized, definitely not commercial traffic. Bridge to combat. We have 4 surface contacts, 27 miles out and closing. The carrier's captain responded calmly, copy. Light them up. Within seconds, the USS Gravely and USS Mason shifted position, forming a defensive wedge in front of the carrier. The escort ships tightened their formation. Phalanx CIWS turrets rotated to standby. Every sailor on deck knew exactly what that meant: possible hostile approach. The lead Venezuelan boat, Nada, 23, throttled past 40 knots. The captain believed they were approaching a single American destroyer running alone. His radar tech either didn't notice, or couldn't understand the massive return hiding behind the smaller one, the aircraft carrier itself. At 5:48 a.m., the Venezuelans finally broke radio silence. You are entering Venezuelan waters. Alter course immediately. No reply. Just cold static from the American carrier. 3 minutes later, the Venezuelan boats reached visual range, and that's when every sailor aboard Nada, 23 saw it. They had made a massive mistake. That wasn't a destroyer. They were staring straight at a U.S. aircraft carrier, backed by a fully armed strike group that already had their weapons locked on the incoming boats. The Venezuelan squadron hadn't intercepted just any American vessel. They had sailed directly toward one of the deadliest formations at sea, a U.S. Navy carrier strike group. At its heart, USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, call sign IKE, nuclear powered, 4.5 acres of armored deck, nearly 70 aircraft aboard, a floating city to her crew, a floating nightmare to anyone foolish enough to threaten her. Flanking her were 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Gravely and USS Mason, each carrying more than 90 vertical launch cells packed with everything from Tomahawks to Sea Sparrow interceptors. On the outer ring, the Ticonderoga-class cruiser Philippine Sea maintained overwatch, tracking anything within 250 miles. Above them, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters swept the waters, dipping sonars, scanning infrared, hunting for fast movers. All of it was fed back into the carrier's combat information center: radar, sonar, satellite link, one massive tactical picture spanning an entire ocean. So the moment those Venezuelan boats appeared, every ship saw them instantly. The system tagged them, Skunk Alpha 1 through 4. Unknown surface contacts, heading north. Speed, 42 knots. The order went out: maintain course. Do not engage unless fired upon. A simple rule, built on decades of experience. The US Navy never fires first. They let you get close enough to understand exactly how big a mistake you're making. And right now, 4 Venezuelan captains were about to learn that lesson the hard way. At 5:52, aboard the Gravely, a radar operator leaned forward, contacts accelerating. Bearing steady. They're not changing course. That single sentence turned the entire combat information center into a live wire. 4 blips crawled across the radar, now only 22 miles out. This wasn't smuggler behavior. Smugglers avoid detection. These boats were charging straight in. The Gravely's captain made the call. Broadcast on Maritime Emergency Channel. Unidentified Venezuelan vessels, this is a United States Navy warship. You are in international waters. Alter course immediately. No reply. The Venezuelan formation split. 2 boats hugging low against the waves, 2 sweeping wide into a pincer pattern. That wasn't random movement. That was tactics. Up on Eisenhower's flight deck, crew chiefs rushed to prep another MH-60R Romeo helicopter. Its task: get eyes on the targets. Within minutes, the Seahawk was airborne, slicing through the humid Caribbean air. At 500 feet, the pilot called out, visual contact, 4 fast patrol craft, approximately 45 feet, Venezuelan flags visible, forward-mounted guns. The command center streamed the feed to every ship. Crystal clear video, 4 wakes cutting straight toward the strike group. At 6:01 a.m., the lead Venezuelan boat locked onto what their radar identified as Echo 2. According to their outdated intel sheet, Echo 2 was a lone U.S. destroyer operating without carrier support, an ideal target for a dramatic warning run. The plan was simple: buzz close, fire a few harmless bursts into the water, record it, send the footage to state media, claim victory. Caracas wanted a headline, a propaganda clip to show their Navy pushing back against the Americans. But their data was 2 days old, and everything had changed overnight. Echo 2 wasn't a destroyer running solo anymore. The radar echo they had locked onto was the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the flagship herself. On the Nada 23's bridge, the Venezuelan captain stared at the silhouette rising out of the morning haze. Something looked off. Too large. Too flat. Too tall. The radar cross-section filled the entire scope. At first, he assumed it was two ships sailing side by side. Then the reflections from the carrier's island tower and aircraft elevators gave it away. They weren't chasing a destroyer. They had run straight at a full-sized American aircraft carrier. By now, the U.S. strike group had gone to full alert. Gravely and Mason shifted position, forming a physical barrier between the carrier and the incoming patrol boats. The helicopters maintained overhead eyes. Inside the Eisenhower's Combat Direction Center, every sensor was pointed at the Venezuelan formation. Still determined to carry out their demonstration, the Venezuelan boats fired two short bursts into the water. The Venezuelan commander grabbed his mic, voice trembling, "Cease approach. Cease approach. Disengage." But it was too late for calm words. The American clock had already started. 6:03 a.m. Inside the Eisenhower, the Combat Direction Center shifted to Condition 1. No sirens. No shouting. Just a cold, controlled announcement, weapons release authorized for self-defense. Aboard the Gravely, sailors manned the 5-inch gun. The Phalanx CIWS turret spun up, tracking the fast boats automatically. Its barrels capable of unleashing 4,500 rounds per minute. Above them, the Seahawk helicopter dropped to 200 feet, hovering directly over the incoming craft. The sensor operator zoomed in. Men on the Nada 23. Bandanas. Helmets. Fingers tight on the triggers of their mounted guns. Then the Seahawk pilot heard a tone. A fire control radar from the Venezuelan boat had locked onto the Gravely. That was the final straw. "Bridge, we are painted," the pilot reported. "Copy. Maintain visual. Do not engage unless fired upon." Inside the Eisenhower, the tactical action officer ran through the rules of engagement. U.S. policy was explicit: don't start the fight, but finish it fast if it begins. A full minute of tension passed. Every gun crew, every radar operator, every watchstander, waiting. The Venezuelan boats eased off slightly, barely noticeable. Then, one of them accelerated again, speeding toward Gravely's bow at 45 knots. Standby countermeasures. Chaff pods armed. Laser designators warned. Dozens of weapons pointed in one direction. One wrong twitch could start a war. Everyone knew it. The Gravely's captain kept a steady hand. He knew the math: 4 patrol boats versus 2 destroyers plus 1 aircraft carrier plus 1 cruiser plus helicopters equals suicide. At 6:06 a.m., the Seahawk pilot reported, "One vessel breaking formation, turning away." Then another. Radar contacts began fading, one after another. The Venezuelan formation was retreating, but not peacefully. American guns stayed hot. American radios stayed silent. Because everyone understood, just because they were turning now didn't mean the danger was over. Not even close. 6:07 a.m. Hull number 23, Nada 23, the lead Venezuelan boat, turned wide, looping toward the carrier's southern flank. No one could tell whether it was a mistake, pride, confusion, or miscommunication. But to U.S. operators watching the radar, it looked like an attack run. Contact closing fast, bearing 210. Every ship snapped back into defensive geometry. The Mason altered course, sliding between the carrier and the incoming contact. The CRAM launcher rotated. Missile bay doors opened. One wrong move, and this wouldn't be a standoff. It would be a shooting war lasting less than 10 seconds. From the air, the Seahawk pilot called, "Lead Venezuelan boat turning inside Mason's wake, distance 1.5 nautical miles." That's seconds in naval time. Inside the Mason CIC, the tactical watch officer spoke calmly. "If that boat crosses 1,000 yards, engage with a warning burst." "Copy. 1,000-yard line." The Venezuelan boat kept coming. The Mason fired 2 green flares, the universal U.S. Navy signal, "Turn away now." No response. Then the Venezuelan gunner made a near-fatal mistake. He pulled the charging handle on his deck gun. Just one metallic sound. Picked up by the Seahawk's microphone. "Gun movement confirmed," the pilot shouted. "Target within 900 yards." Every weapon in the strike group tracked Nada 23. On board the Gravely, the captain raised his hand. "Hold fire, hold." At 6:08 a.m., the Venezuelan boat suddenly veered hard to port, engine screaming as it peeled away, throwing spray across the water. The others followed. Formation, broken. Threat, dissolving. Moments later, the message crackled in overcoms, "Contacts retreating. All units stand down." Weapons maintained tracking. A gunfight neither side wanted, but both were seconds away from starting, was over, for now. By 7 a.m., the Caribbean was calm again. No Venezuelan boats on radar. No engine noise on sonar. No wakes on the horizon. The Eisenhower strike group held its course, 20 knots, heading north, as if nothing had happened. But everyone on board knew the truth. The confrontation wasn't over. It was simply moving to a different battlefield. The political one. 2 hours later, Venezuelan state media released a short, grainy video. It showed their patrol boats racing across open water, no American ships in frame, with dramatic narration claiming they had repelled an American incursion. In Washington, the Pentagon didn't wait. Within hours, they released satellite imagery, radar logs, navigation tracks, all proving the U.S. strike group had been operating fully inside international waters, more than 80 miles from Venezuelan territory. The U.S. called it reckless brinkmanship. Caracas called it sovereign defense. Both sides were technically right. Both sides were completely unwilling to back down. Behind the scenes, diplomats scrambled to cool things off. No shots fired. No injuries. Just a near miss. But inside the fleet, sailors understood something the press releases would never say: the difference between a near miss and a naval war is razor thin. Sometimes as thin as a misunderstood radio call, a misread radar echo, a nervous finger on a trigger. One error, and you're past the point of no return. By the next morning, the Eisenhower quietly shifted farther north. The Venezuelan boats returned to port under radio silence. Publicly, both sides moved on. At sea, nobody believed it was over. Not for a second. People think warships see everything. In reality, the ocean hides mistakes better than any battlefield on Earth. At night or in low light, even a seasoned radar operator can confuse silhouettes. A destroyer and a carrier can produce similar reflections on old screens, large steel hulls. Sharp radar returns. Electromagnetic noise bouncing off waves. Add tired operators, poor weather, outdated gear. And suddenly your target isn't what you think it is. That's exactly what happened here. The Venezuelan crews weren't using live shipboard radar. They were using shore-fed radar data, piped from old coastal stations, a static grid. One that didn't update fast enough to reflect the Eisenhower group's repositioning overnight. A 30-mile shift was all it took, and a routine patrol turned into a full-blown international incident. This is what naval officers call threat mirroring. Each side interprets the other's defensive move as an offensive one, even when nobody intends to start a fight. Modern naval warfare isn't just about missiles and radar. It's about judgment. Human judgment. One misread signal. One late transmission. One flare fired a second too soon. And you're in a crisis before anyone even says the word fire. The official reports later called it a routine encounter. But the sailors who lived it, they called it something else. The closest they had ever come to firing live rounds outside of wartime. Looking back, it makes you wonder how thin that line really is. One flare. One radar lock. One commander's nerves slipping. That's all it takes to turn a tense standoff into headlines nobody wants to write. At sea, there is no rewind button. Once you commit, you live with the outcome. So here's the question for you. You're on the bridge. Alarms are screaming. For fast boats are racing toward your ship at 40 knots. Do you hold fire and risk getting hit? Or fire first and risk starting a war? Drop your answer below. I want to see how you'd call that one. Thanks for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. Share it with a friend who loves naval stories. And don't forget to subscribe, so you never miss a debrief the next time a close call hits the ocean. In the end, the Venezuelan Navy didn't just pick the wrong target. They picked the worst possible day to forget their map. I'll see you in the next one.